Welcome everybody. I'm Wilma Hodges, Director of Training and E-Learning Initiatives at Longsight, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Today's session will be an update on the Lessons Enhancement Project, or LEaP. So we have Neal, Caidin, Josh Barron, and Luisa Lee here to talk about the project and give us kind of a sneak peek at some of the new stuff coming in lessons. First, just some general housekeeping. We are recording the session, so a link to the recording will be sent out about a day after the event. You can also view previous sessions on the Sakai YouTube channel, and the URL is listed there for you. During the session, if you have any questions, please post them in the questions text box, and we'll answer those either during the session or toward the end, depending on when the speakers pause for Q&A. If you'd also like to post any comments or questions on Twitter, you can do that at #SakaiShowcase, and I'll be monitoring that as well if we have any questions come in on Twitter on the back channel. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can always contact me at wilma@longsight.com. So let me introduce our presenters. We have Neal Caidin, who has 14 years experience in higher ed and 19 years in IT, some as a software developer and much of it in project management, and now the Apereo community coordination. He is a certified project management professional by the International PMI org. His first experience in open source was co-founding the Ocelot open source group, which stemmed from a community building effort around open source building blocks or plugins for the Blackboard LMS. Neal has 14 years experience with learning management systems. We also have Josh Barron. Josh is a technology innovator, entrepreneur, and leader with a passion for teaching and learning who seeks opportunities that will allow him to fulfill his lifelong desire to transform and radically improve education. Throughout his career, Josh has had the pleasure of facilitating learning among students of nearly all ages, from kindergarten to graduate courses, in almost all formats, from fully online to face-to-face. These experiences have occurred at a variety of U.S. and international educational organizations, including K-12 schools, community colleges, liberal arts, and research institutions. A common element in all of these experiences has been a focus on using technology to truly innovate how we teach and how students learn. Today, as Assistant Vice President, Information Technology for Digital Education at Marist College, Josh's time is divided between working at the local institutional level, helping faculty explore ways to use technology to innovate the learner's educational experience, and at the national and international level, leading large-scale educational technology initiatives. And our third speaker is Luisa Lee. Luisa is the instructional designer in academic technology and e-learning at Marist College. Her work focuses on faculty development, training, support, course design, and research on innovative educational technologies. Luisa Lee has over 10 years' experience in higher ed, ranging from teaching, training, administration, and research. She is involved in several projects in the Apereo community, including LEaP, Twizia, and the Teaching and Learning Group. So, before I turn it over to our presenters, let me just launch a few quick polls. Let me pull up the poll tool here. Okay, this first one is, what is your primary role at your institution? This is one we typically ask just to get a feel for who's in the audience. And actually, you can select more than one. So if you're watching this with some friends and you're in different roles, you can actually choose multiple options now. That was a little tweak we made to this particular poll. I'll give folks just a couple more seconds to answer. Okay, going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to close the poll and share out the results. It looks like a lot of instructional design support people here today, so that's great. I'm sure a lot of you have some hands-on experience using lessons. We also have a large percentage of information technology folks, and about 10% administration, 10% faculty. So that's great. We have a wide range of people here today. Let me go ahead and launch our second poll, which is, what is your experience using lessons? So if you're just starting out with lessons, haven't used it very much, maybe be in the beginner area. If you use it quite a bit, you're doing some fancy tricks, you might be advanced, and anything kind of in between those would be intermediate. Okay. Let me go ahead and close that poll and share out the results. So it looks like a lot of people fall into the intermediate category. That's the majority of our users, but we also have a good number of folks, about 22%, that are still beginning to use it, and 34% that are advanced. So you guys are kind of getting into the more creative aspects of it. So I'm sure you'll be excited to see what we're doing to improve the functionality of lessons. All right, and then our final poll is, would you be interested in contributing to future lessons enhancements? As most of you know, this is a community-funded effort. It's sort of a collaboratively funded community effort. So as we move forward and come to a close with this phase and start thinking about phase 2, obviously we're going to be looking for additional community partners. So just to kind of get an idea of where the interest is in potentially helping to fund future developments. Okay, let me share this one out. So looks like half of you said maybe, which is great. We were going to try to do a conditional thing where if you said yes, you did have to give your credit card number, but that one wasn't really possible, so we didn't want to put too much pressure on folks. All right, so let me go ahead and hide this. And now I'm going to turn over the presenter controls to Luisa. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, Luisa, you have the presenter controls.
Yes, thank you. Give me a second to launch the PowerPoint. So Josh, you want to start?
Sure. So welcome everybody. Really appreciate everybody turning out and putting some time into here getting the update. First thing I want to do is really thank and recognize Luisa and Neal Caidin. I'm going to kind of kick this off just briefly here, but they have really been the co-chairs working in the working group. I'll explain what that group is in just a minute. Working with a large number of other folks, but I think Neal and Luisa have really put a lot of time into moving this project forward in a very positive direction. So really want to recognize and thank them, and also want to thank Wilma, you, and Longsight as usual for organizing these webinars and hosting them. It's a great way of facilitating sharing among the community. So just appreciate the work you're doing there as well. So why don't you bring up the next slide and quick rundown on the agenda here. I'm going to do a very brief introduction to the project to kind of set some context, make sure everybody's kind of familiar with a little bit of the background. I'll speak briefly about the governance model, which I think is very important but may not be the most exciting part of the presentation, so I'll do that very briefly. I'll then turn it over to Luisa and Neal, who I think will talk about some of the things that most of you probably are most interested in seeing in terms of where we are in the project, some of the progress that's been made. I think they're going to show some of the wireframes that are being implemented now and so forth. And then I'm particularly interested in talking about next steps and doing Q&A at the end, see where people are thinking in terms of continuing this kind of work. I would encourage everybody to write questions down as we go. I'll put them in the chat window so we can, because I think we're going to reserve a good chunk of time at the end to have a discussion. Go to the next slide. So a little bit of background and context here in terms of where this project came from and the goals that have been focused on for the last year. So the roots of the project, for those who may not be familiar with it, actually go back over almost 2 years now. The Teaching and Learning Group spent a lot of time in the 2013-14 academic year thinking about and discussing various models and ideas for how that group might come together and work to enhance and improve some of the existing tools and capabilities within the Sakai platform. And we had a lot of kind of different experiments we did. We did some work that we decided wasn't going to be the right direction. But ultimately, from that set of conversations and work that happened, I think 3 major things or kind of outcomes came out of that. One was a decision that focusing on Lesson Builder, which is now more frequently referred to as the Lessons tool, made a lot of sense. It had and remains something that I think has garnered a lot of interest and excitement in the community. It's providing capabilities that are really central to the teaching and learning process. At least that's my view on it. I think it was the consensus of the group. So it made some real sense to focus on that tool to make some enhancements. In terms of the, we identified a long list of different things that we thought could be done with the tool in terms of future work. Some of that fell into the category of creating new capabilities and improving capabilities in the tool. Others were more on the kind of user experience, user interface side of improvements. Ultimately, the second big outcome was the decision, I think, to focus on the user interface and the user experience first. I think Chuck Hedrick out of Rutgers was one of the folks who really very strongly pushed, and I think rightly so, to address the user experience issues first, because we started to add more capabilities, hadn't done that yet. We actually might make the tool so complicated that it was hard for people to use. So there was that decision to focus on the user experience as part of a first project. And that really led to the third major outcome, which was the realization that we needed real resources in order to do that work. So simply working through a user experience research activity where we identify the types of things that we would like to see improved in the interface wasn't going to be enough. Just taking that information and tossing it to the community and say, okay, someone go work on that and implement that wasn't terribly realistic. And so we realized we were going to need to raise funds and get resources organized in order to kind of execute on the project. And the team that you see listed here is really the group of organizations that came together to provide those resources. Why don't you go to the next slide, and I'll speak to that just a little bit more. During or going into last year's Open Apereo conference, and then basically the month afterwards, these 7 partners kind of surfaced as groups that saw value in enhancing the UI for lessons, enough value to actually contribute both cash and people time to make that happen. So many of the partners put in $5,000 each of cash to help fund this, and some of them, such as Unicom, put in developer hours of equivalent amount to help implement the project. And so coming out of last year's Apereo conference, the project really kind of kicked off and got started, at least in terms of having the resources we felt we needed to do the work. We then spent time interviewing and talking with a range of different user experience design firms and individuals, ultimately selected Express Labs, and I believe there's some staff from Express Labs on the call today. If you're not familiar with them, they've done some work on the OpenCast Matterhorn project as well, so they kind of came highly recommended in terms of an open source project they'd worked on. We thought they had the right vision, and so we hired them to do the primary design work for the project. Unicom as well provided the UI developer resources that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Charles or Chuck Hedrick out of Rutgers, who may also be on the phone as well, given his many years of working and overseeing the tool, really acted as a critical technical advisor and also worked on implementing things, but really was critical to have this partnership between not just the teaching and learning group and designers, but also developers, the technical side. And there was a lot of back and forth to make sure that things that we were doing could be implemented in a realistic time frame and so forth. I'll save the kind of process stuff a little bit for Luisa and Neal to speak to, but I think there was a really great collaborative effort that bridged not just the project, but brought the larger community in, and again, engaged this broad spectrum of community participation all the way from teaching and learning to developers to designers and senior leadership at the institutions, particularly those who contributed. If you want to, that's why you can move on, but if you want to, there's a link on that prior slide that goes to the Confluence page for the project. You can take a look at that in detail. It gives you a lot more history and background than you're probably interested in, but it's all documented there. So why don't you go to the next and last slide, for me at least, which I think is an important topic to touch on, because the governance model and the model itself for doing this work, I think, was an equally important goal and kind of part of this experiment as the project itself, meaning that I think ultimately we really wanted to see this goal realized of improving the user experience of the tool. In a few minutes, I think you'll see that that was achieved in a great way. But we were also wanting to experiment with this other goal of, does this model work? Can we actually bring together this broad spectrum of people from the community, fundraise in a sense, and find resources to engage in a project, and then have this kind of collaboration that spans teaching and learning designers and developers. And so the way we organize the project and the model, which I think in general has worked quite well, is by creating this governance structure where we had kind of two primary groups that were overseeing the project. Steering group. The steering group was made up of kind of institutional decision makers, for lack of a better word, at the institutions and organizations that help fund and support the project. And really they were there to just do some very high-level oversight of the project, make sure resources were being spent the way they needed to be spent, address any major showstoppers or challenges the project hit that others couldn't address, and so forth. Honestly, the group only met, I think, once and did the rest via email. It was a very kind of lightweight oversight role that group was playing. The working group, which was made up of individuals from the same kind of organizations and institutions, but these were folks with a lot more hands-on experience with the lessons tool and the ones who were really on the front, in the front trenches, in a sense, working with faculty members using the tool. And they were really the ones who kind of made this project happen and got the requirements gathered and worked with the designers. And again, I'll leave it to Neal and Luisa to fill in more details there. Then you see these other two arrows here. One is with the developers and designers. I've already kind of spoken to them a bit. There was a lot of interaction going between the working group and that group. And then this arrow down at the bottom going to the larger Sakai community and teaching and learning group. So there were surveys done, for example, of the whole community to set some priorities around improvements that the community wanted to see as well. I think ultimately the feeling was that since there was a group funding this, that they needed to have the most input into what ended up happening, but at the same time recognizing that diverse thinking coming out of the community was critical to innovation, and so we wanted to have a way of making sure the larger community had input as well. The last thing there you see at the bottom is a link to our very kind of lightweight governance structure. It's a one-page or so Google Doc, and it really just kind of emphasizes that the decisions should be made as close to the problem as they can be, meaning, again, the working group should really be making most of the decisions here, and it just spelled out some of the relationships between the steering group and working group and things like how finances would be handled and things of that nature. I should note there, too, that the Apereo Foundation played a critical role in holding those finances, dealing with accounting, invoicing, some of the more kind of, I'll say, mundane work, but critical work to have this model be successful. So my last comment, and I'll turn it over to Luisa, is that I personally, it'll be interesting to hear from the rest of the group, feel like the model has worked extremely well. As all experiments go, there's lessons to be learned and things we can do better in the future. But I do think it really provides the larger community with a model for how we can go about enhancing and improving other tools within Sakai and continue enhancing the lessons tool. And already we're seeing some with the Gradebook project, other projects kind of popping up using a similar model. So that was one of the other reasons of giving folks the link to the governance model and Confluence site. If there's people thinking about doing this for other tools and capabilities, please go borrow the work that we've done already, and it would be great to have people reach out, let the teaching and learning group know about that. We can all collaborate to make more of these projects possible. So with that, unless I've missed something and I need to make other comments, I'll turn that over to Luisa and Neal to cover the rest of the session.
All right, thank you, Josh. I will now take over to talk about the actual planning and development efforts. As you know, we started the project last year around July. Then the team was formed and we quickly move on to collect suggestions from the community. So what we did was a community survey. We tried to identify the usability problems that a lot of people are facing when using the tool. The survey is still open, and if you like, you can go to the form and take a look at it. And it was overwhelmingly well received and responded. We received about actually not about, 96 responses by October 14. It was amazing because it was only 10 days. We received overwhelmingly support from the community. And Johnson University actually contributed 20 entries. It was really amazing. I just did a rough tabulation of the institutions. There were about 44 institutions, faculties, instructors, instructional designers, technical support administrators, and also 21 students. Thank you so much for rallying for us and getting all those votes to us in the survey. And we asked the community about 4 major areas of interest: the tool manuals, page navigations, and also a second is the page authoring, the design capabilities. Third is the functional workflows, such as moving items and embedding activities. The fourth, integration between lessons and other tools. And of course, others, if you have other ideas, suggestions you want to take. We collect all the findings and work on a trends document. If you go to this link, you can see a collective findings from those responses. The community definitely have a lot of ideas to how to improve this tool in terms of UX, UI, or even new capabilities. So for example, we need new header and menu, and also in the page design capabilities, people are asking if we could have a kind of 2-column design, and also would like to have a capability to drag and drop items, not only on the page but also on the index of pages, and also conditional release. And quite a lot of people are asking, if there are any way to use lessons as a central hub for a course site. If you have attended the teaching and learning call, you know that we've been having several discussions about many of the new functionalities and how to use the lessons. Sorry, I cannot go into too much detail on the findings because I want to show you what we come up with in the next step. So in light of those findings, we try to redefining our scope because there are so many things we have to actually focus on. So the focus is on improvements on the user experience and the user interface, and not the new functionalities. So unfortunately, we cannot just do everything at one time. So the new priorities we come up with are clean up the header and the menu, and also on the index of pages, we want to improve the navigation and possibly have drag and drop functions. Conditional release, we want to have clear indication and notation. A page navigation, we want to improve navigation between top-level pages and sub-pages. Also, the page design, we look into the possibilities to have a 2-column design. So we talked with a lot of people, teaching and learning group. We have talked with the UX designers from Express Lab, and also our technical advisor, Charles Hedrick, and also developers from Unicorns. And we have many meetings within the working group. So we have a lot of considerations in hand, and we also want to get some results so that we can fit into the Sakai 11 release. And I guess you have heard of the responsive design in the Morpheus, and what's the possibility of make the lessons more visually appealing, and also is going to mobile. And there are a lot of design principles we have to consider. So eventually we try to refocus the project. So this is what we've been doing and come up with in the wireframe. So this is the current lessons tool. So thanks to Longside again for providing the QA server so we can do testing and the demonstration. So I know you're quite familiar with this. So this is the high fidelity wireframe we eventually come up with. So just a little word about high fidelity. So when you work on the mock-up of a product, you first have the low fidelity. I believe Express Lab can explain much better. Just some very quick explanation here. So low fidelity, you have the high-level design decisions on the layout, the navigation, etc. And then the high fidelity is what you actually will develop. And so layout, navigation, color choices, the templates, size of the icons, the spacing, etc. I'm going to the link right now. Let me exit the PowerPoint. Okay, so this link here. All right, you can go to this link and look at the wireframe yourself. Now, first of all, the header and menus are greatly improved. We had a talk about what kind of menu items you want. That was a huge discussion. Eventually, Express Lab persuaded us that we are going mobile, we're going to use responsive designs. The quick access buttons are a lot easier and much better. And of course, because if we want to cram all the menu items onto the header, it's going to be really crowded. So we made a kind of compromise. We have several quick access buttons here for the more popular or frequently used functions. And then we add some of the other functions in a drop-down menu. So these are all here. And then here we also cleaned it up and put some of the features in here. So there's no click on here, sorry. Then if you go to the index of pages, and we also clean up those menu buttons here. If you click option, you will see these import functions and permission and add top-level pages. So eventually we want you to be able to also change the page settings right here on the index of pages. These buttons are the drag and drop functions we're hoping to achieve in the future. So if this is activated, you can drag and drop those pages very easily, right? And also we organize the help button. If you click the help button, you get a pop-up window asking you if you want to go to the system help or you want to go to the lessons tips that originally on the lessons page, right? Okay, now if you go back, let's look at some other changes on this page. All right, if you look at this content on the page, you can see each items on the page has a border. It looks like a block, right? So each of the building blocks are clearly defined and a very clear interface. And also Express Lab, I think, is really smart. They come up with a very interesting use of this expand and collapse button. So for example, if you have a quiz and a form, these two links, you can collapse them so they look like one block. So it separates from the text information you put. But of course, if you want to put them together, you can join them. So click on this button, then they are joined. We quite like this, this design. And for each of the items you can add into the page, the wireframe, you can see that redefine the icons, make it clear and simple, and we also consider some other features. For example, if you add a PDF, would you want to download, or if you're in a browser? So these we can continue to discuss. Let me see, is there anything else? Yes. So if you click on the Edit button, you go to the Rich Text Editor interface. So those buttons are also cleaned up, and they look like those buttons on the front page. So everything try to keep it consistent, right? But not losing any existing functionalities. Okay, so go back. Okay, so if you go to the other menu buttons, so assignments, quizzes, forums, so if you click on any of those, these are all pop-up windows. And if you click on any of those, you can see those pop-up windows all cleaned up, has a unified interface design. And if you want to add this one, and you can click Add, and it's added. Okay, so I think there's a couple others you can test. So for example, questions. You can question is a pretty complicated tool, and there are a lot of options here, and you can see these are all changed and cleaned up. Very nice. Okay. Let's see. Did I miss anything? Order, help. Okay. All right. If you have questions, ask me. I will show you what I have missed.
Actually, we had a couple questions about the links.
Yes.
They're wondering
Sure.
if you could paste the links into the chat so that people can visit them.
You mean this one?
Yeah, the link to the wireframe.
Okay, I'm gonna get a link.
And also I mentioned that we could send out a copy of the PowerPoint after the session so that folks can go to some of those other links on Confluence.
So Wilma, can you share the link with the group?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions on the wireframe?
Let's see. We had a question about student pages. I believe it's called student content in the wireframe.
Yeah. This one doesn't have the mockup of that wireframe, but the overall look will be very similar to this look and feel of this box. Okay, I think a student page, I think it would be very similar to this overall look, like add a question, add a student page, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Other
see.
questions?
I'm looking for questions specifically related to the wireframe. Well, actually, I'll just start going through some of the questions in general.
Sure.
And we can just kind of take them in the order that they came in. So one of the first questions was on the page design. Has there been more conversation about templates and making it possible for the instructional designer to choose the design layout?
Oh, we got lots of this kind of requests in the survey, but however, this improvement, we try to focus on the UI and the UX of it. So right now, we don't have any plan to move on to the templates yet, but it's definitely in consideration. Yeah.
Right. And I know, I'm not sure if some of you have been able to make some of the teaching and learning calls, but there was some discussion there about developing CSS style sheets to share to create sort of CSS templates that could be shared out. And that can be done with the current functionality.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Is there a way to hide or release subpages by date? I believe you can do that now, can't you?
Yeah, I think you can. So if you go to the pages and go to the page settings, there is a date, the open date of your pages. So the improvement is that right now you only have access to the page settings on the page. The improvement is that if you go to the index of pages, you get this gear button for the page settings, so it's more obvious. You can navigate to this page setting button much easier.
Okay, in the rich text editor, we'll be able to set a default font. That would be new functionality. That's not
exactly. Yeah, that's a new functionality. But I know that if you set it up in the styles, I think you can do that. Have a unified font style and the color. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Well, students have more tools than just the text. Well, the students would have the same tools that they have now. So the UI redo doesn't really change the way that it works currently.
Yeah, we keep all the existing functionality. Yeah.
Let's see. Is it possible to change the title of the block for student content?
Okay. The student content?
Down there where you have pages.
No, that will be a new functionality.
Right.
Change the functionality of that student page item. So we haven't got that far yet.
Can we see? Oh, go ahead.
Luisa, as Josh here, just jumping in here for a second, because a lot of the questions that are coming up, or at least some, are related to capability enhancements. So I just wanted to make the observation that it came up a lot during the project planning, and in fact, I think it was a huge challenge for many of us, myself included, to kind of put the capability improvements aside for a minute, because there certainly are a good list of those people want, and to decide to focus on the user experience to make it really a positive experience before we added new capabilities. The other issue was just resources. We had limited resources, and so we couldn't focus on both. But I wanted to just acknowledge that, I think there's a tremendous amount of interest from the group, the working group, to expand this work and start building out new capabilities. And I think there might be ability to do that in kind of the next phase of this project. But I just wanted to kind of give some context there.
Definitely. So I want to give you a few minutes to talk about development. We can continue the Q&A in a few minutes. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So Neal, you want to take over?
Sure. Thanks. This is Neal Caidin, Sakai Community Coordinator with Apereo Foundation, and so this is what you're seeing is the culmination of a lot of work that went into phase one, and the hope is that we'll have additional phases. And where a lot of the energy went in was in creating those wireframes. That is, where we've built out a vision of what lessons could be, or one vision of what lessons could be. And for the first phase, we are doing, for the actual implementation, we're doing a header and menu. So it's a percentage of all those changes that you just saw through the wireframe, and it will give us, I think, a positive view in terms of where we can go with the lessons tool. So I think there's a huge benefit of doing a small change. Now we have, let's see how the community responds to this relatively small change compared to everything we can do, but it's still heading in the right direction. Get that feedback. Are we heading in the right direction? And then we also have learned better what the process is in terms of engaging with the Express Labs for doing the user design, how that process works back and forth, how we engage with developers. We have some better sense of the order of magnitude of the costs involved. And so I think what we'll have at the end of this product is we'll have some CSS changes, some rearrangement of the menus, which should help as we move forward with responsive design in Morpheus. And we'll also be able to say, well, if we want to complete the rest of this wireframe, then it would cost X amount of dollars. Or if we're thinking about doing some of those additional ideas from the community in terms of functionality, we could say, okay, maybe that's where we shift our priorities, and we have a better sense of how that process will work and how we would do our estimations. So I think there's a huge advantage. I'm not sure we exactly planned it to come out this way, but I think there's a huge advantage in actually only implementing a small piece of the whole wireframes, because we get such a great opportunity for community feedback in the process. Next slide. So Apereo and Unicon signed the statement of work on March 25th, and we're already at a point where Unicon is expecting to have their code done within the next week or two, and we will have that run by Chuck Hedrick to make sure that technically it fits with the standard Sakai needs and the standards. And then what will happen is, so there's a term in there called the pull request, and the way that works is Sakai now is on a new platform. It's called GitHub, and it makes it very transparent for developers to contribute code, and then it makes it easy to see the comments from other developers. So we'll have a phased approach where first we'll get some initial comments from Chuck Hedrick. Then when we feel like the code is ready to go and Unicon feels like the code is ready to go, we can put it into what's called trunk, which is the part of Sakai which is constantly being updated, constantly being enhanced by developers. And then at some point, and so that's what that pull request is, and then the developers will review the pull request, and when they're comfortable with it, they'll then merge it into the main stream of Sakai. And further down the road, and our time frame is roughly, we're thinking late June-ish for branching off, or maybe even a little bit later than that, where we'll be branching off Sakai 11. And we'll be starting to say, okay, this is what's in scope for Sakai 11. Here's all the features that have gotten in. And now we need to do some intensive QA and bug fixing to get it to the quality where we feel comfortable releasing it. One advantage of doing it in that process is that there'll be an opportunity, I'm confident there'll be an opportunity by the time we go, for example, to the Open Apereo conference where we can show live what the change is and what the changes are. So instead of having to sort of imagine them and look at the wireframes and think about what we're talking about in terms of making CSS changes and headers and menus, where you can see specifically, what got into Sakai 11, what additional work we potentially could do, if we can get additional fundraising, get additional resources, and that I think could stimulate a lot of really great discussion in terms of the direction of the lessons tool. Next slide. Okay, so next step. So as we mentioned, the lessons is the enhanced lessons tool is going into Sakai 11. So that's very exciting because that was really one of the big goals is to show some tangible improvements in the lessons user interface for Sakai 11. And will there be a phase 2? And that really goes back to that survey we did at the very beginning of this presentation. Would your institution be willing to invest in further development and lessons? And I think that this has been really, really groundbreaking work from a couple of perspectives. One, Josh mentioned, is the structure of having the steering group, having the working group, being able to push a lot of the work down to the working group to make as many decisions as possible. But the other, I think, groundbreaking thing is bringing in Express Labs, bringing in a partner for doing the user interface design. I'm not sure if Sakai has ever done that before, where we've said, okay, let's not focus so much on the new functionality. Let's focus on making the existing functionality even more elegant, even more easy to use, giving even a better first impression and a smoother process for getting done what you want to get done. And so will there be a phase 2 really depends upon the community. If the community looks at the changes and looks at the roadmap and has a discussion and decides on the priorities and said, yes, this is where we want to go, depending what the outcome of the discussion is how we can, and then people committing, institutions committing resources to make it happen, we can have a phase 2. And we can have, even beyond that. And I think that Lessons represents really a transformative tool in Sakai, and we keep hearing on the teaching and learning calls different ways in which it's being used and different hopes about what it can do and the flexibility we'd like to enhance it with. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity to take something that already has been a huge positive impact in the community and making it like a showcase tool and something that can really tie Sakai together and fit into what people want to do with it in terms of teaching and learning. So now it's time to hear from you.
Okay.
Are there any other final comments, Josh or Luisa?
Yeah. Josh?
I think you guys did a great job summarizing everything. I guess I'll just thank both of you and everybody in the working group and Express Labs Unicon again for getting us to this point. It's been certainly challenging at times, and I know there have been times where it's been stressful, but I think it really has been extremely successful. I'm really looking forward to seeing the final stuff at Apereo. So.
So we're taking questions now? Yes.
Sure. Okay, so can we see an example with either a video or an image displayed? I think at one point we had a wireframe with an image. Not sure if you have it handy.
This?
Yeah, if there's any of those with an image displayed on the page.
Image display on the page?
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was the low fidelity wireframe I was thinking
Yeah,
of.
there was in the low fidelity. Let me see if I can find one. I think at one point they try to embed an image. They have a sample. Let me see here. Mockup. Okay. Yeah, this one. Okay. Oops. Yeah, it's something like this.
Okay.
Can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And that was in the low fidelity, so that's not the
Yeah.
final,
Mm-hmm.
but that was kind of one concept for how that might look.
Yeah. So when you embed an image, it can be aligned to the left or the right. You can also put the descriptions here. Yeah, instead of at the bottom, so you can put it on the side. Yeah.
Okay. We did have a question about adding links from resources and adding more than one resource at a time. I know that was something that we had talked about wanting to do, but was a little beyond the scope.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
I now remember ExpressLab had come up with the design principle they're thinking. There are three major things that they want to tackle: the navigation. They want to have an overhaul of the navigation, and then the second will be the assess library, which is our resources. So they want to also try to tackle that. Basically, it's try to, let me see here what they did. So they want to keep all the assets in a unified location, which is the resources, right? So when you embed or link to those, you can embed multiple resources at a time. And also they will be more intuitive to upload and manage those. But that's basically the resources tool, not part of the lessons tool. But ExpressLab definitely have some ideas about how to integrate the resources tool in the lessons. Yeah, we did discuss that.
What's been the feedback so far on the wireframes and the project to date?
Yeah, we demoed the wireframe to a few people, and in the teaching and learning call, the response has been very positive. People have been asking about it, definitely, and when we demoed the wireframe, in general, quite like the overall look and feel of the interface, and there are some discussions about the header and menu. If you look at it, a little bit resembling the first and the second menu buttons. As I mentioned before, it was a compromise. We're thinking to use the quick access buttons, but unfortunately we cannot condense everything into just one button. So that involved a lot of development in the background, which we cannot do right now. In the future, we're hoping to condense those functionalities into one or two quick access buttons, so the menu bar will be nicer and cleaner than it is right now. Yeah, we're hoping to achieve that in the future. So if you have any feedback about this wireframe, please contact us or email us or go to the teaching and learning call, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Have any students been exposed to the wireframes to get their feedback?
Oh, we haven't. That's a great idea. We can definitely use some students to take a look at it and then see what they think. Yeah, definitely.
Can these updates be implemented outside of a release upgrade? For example, if somebody's still running version 10 and they're not ready to go to 11, can it be backported?
So I guess that's a new question.
Yeah, we're focusing for the on Sakai 11 for these changes and to move it forward. So if somebody wanted to take those patches and apply them to 10, they might have some some additional work to do. So the scope of this is to focus on Sakai 11 and the future. But that being said, the patches will be out in the open, and so again, if there's somebody who has interest in moving it back to 10, that's a possibility. Especially, I think that might be easier in the early work, but I'm not technical enough to know the details on that. So I'd say the main thing is think of it as Sakai 11 and future is the main focus of what this effort is about.
Okay, we have a question relating to prompts. Are there currently any prompts in the new UI that guide students, like if they're going to a test and quiz or an assignment, that there's additional feedback, at that tool?
In the wireframe, I don't have the mock-up of that, but I believe all the existing functionalities are remains. It just the interface looks a lot cleaner and simpler.
Right.
Yeah.
What can an instructional or IT staff do to help move the current work forward and to make it into Sakai 11? Is there anything we can do to help the effort?
The first thing, of course, is once we get it merged into Sakai 11 into Trunk, is to do QA testing. That's the very first need we'll have to make sure that the changes that we're making work as intended, that they don't create any new bugs called regressions that are unexpected. So that's the very first thing that you can do. And then there's going to be discussions at the Open Apereo conference. There's going to be birds of a feather on lessons. There's going to be a community presentation. We might talk about how institutions can get involved in investing in Sakai, kind of like we've talked a little bit about here. So those are other ways to be involved, is to be involved in those discussions, to be involved as an influencer at your institution. If lessons is an important tool to your institution, maybe finding ways to get more involved. And the earlier you get involved in these kinds of processes, the more influence you can have on the direction of the tool and where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you or Josh have anything to add to that.
Yeah, and also I think somebody asked a question about how students feel about it. So if you could contribute a few students to test the tool, that would be even better.
How can institutions...
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add that, in addition to all...
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think in addition to everybody kind of helping by volunteering their own personal time, as I've kind of mentioned earlier, I think that the model has shown that it can work. And so if you're not somebody at your institution who has direct control over funding, and you're interested in supporting more of this work, particularly I'm hearing a lot of interest in new capabilities. You might want to think about talking with folks who might be able to provide some funding to kind of launch phase 2 of this project, which might then focus on new capability work.
You actually answered the question I was about to read off, which is how can institutions contribute toward phase 2, and will this be adding new functionality? So,
well, maybe to get a little bit more specific, that I think that talking with Neal and Luisa and the steering group, sometime between now and Open Apereo, I think we'll try to get some emails out to people to get a first kind of take on exactly who might be interested in contributing at what level and to what goal. So look out for that email and be sure to respond if you're interested.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll give you a nice fruit basket if you contribute enough.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I just got the response from Dan Ephraim. He's in the crowd. He said that if needed, the Express Lab can mock one screen up with the images and other items possibly, so and provide to the group and take a look. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any remaining questions? Okay, we have a question about the merging of content items. How does that work? What does that mean again?
Okay, so I think he's asking about this new functionality here. So if you have, for example, when you insert an item, you would just click any of those buttons. So insert an item. You can insert a text, you can insert a quiz or a forum. So when you have one item, it will be like this. For example, this comment, right? It will be like this. And then if you want to merge several together, you can click on this button. So this and that, if you click this, they will merge together. So visually, it will look like a one block. So for example, this is the example of two merged items, the quiz and the forum. They are in one block. If you want to separate them, you want them to be standalone block, you click on this button, so you separate them. We had a discussion if this icon is very clear to describe its functionality. I think if we have these two icons together, it's self-explanatory, but definitely we'll welcome any feedback you get.
And that's also a good example of an item that's not in scope for Sakai 11 currently.
Yeah.
So, so you have to think about like the wireframe. Think about this wireframe as like a roadmap. This is a direction. If we want to go fully to this direction, then what's going to be in Sakai 11 is like a few steps down the path of where that road goes, and then then we need additional resources if we want to get all the way there. So that's an example of something that won't be in the Sakai 11 version.
Okay.
Yeah, but I personally quite like this feature and give you a lot of flexibility in the page layout design.
And that's why Luisa is doing a matching fun thing. For every $1 you give for that feature, she'll give a dollar to it. Just kidding.
Yeah, I will match it. Yeah.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, do you guys have any final, wrap-up remarks that you'd like to put out there?
Yeah. So we are going to discuss the LEaP in the conference. We have several sessions, presentation, and also BOF sessions. I hope to see many of you here today in the conference, so we can continue the discussion and move on to possibly phase 2 in the very near future.
Well, thank you very much, Josh, Neal, and Luisa. You guys did a great job, going over the project updates and showing us all the wireframes. Really appreciate your time and all the work that you've put into this, because it has been a significant amount of work, and I think it looks really great. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, Wilma.
Thanks, Wilma. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.